Village of Those Who Wait, Chapter 5, First Part. Once the pair had gone about 3/4 of a mile from town, a chain of rugged mountains and the remains of what appeared to be a factory came to view beneath a sea of clouds. "What's that?" Aria asked, gesturing with one hand. "Why, it's the ruins of an iron mill," the hoarse voice replied. "Pretty creepy place. If I were a noble, I'd like to live somewhere like that." "Great idea," the voice said with a mocking laugh. Aria was glaring at Dee's left hand when she heard Dee, his name repeated over and over like an echo. Dee turned in a certain direction. Though the voices seemed to rain down from heaven above, he determined at once where it came from. "Seems someone has business with me. Stay right here." "I'm going too." "I thought you had a pressing engagement." Not giving the flummoxed Aria so much as a backward glance, Dee gave a kick to the flanks of his cyborg horse. Precisely 5 minutes later he returned. The voice had not ceased calling his name. Dee turned toward the ruined factory. It was Aria they were after. Still on horseback, he passed through the entranceway. Death filled the sprawling institution. Enormous blast furnaces and conveyor belts for carrying ore had long since stopped operating, and death, in the guise of time, had nestled the whole place under its black wings. Dee searched for a sign of life. Less than 2 seconds later he found it. Beneath a skylight in the great ceiling hung a room that seemed to serve as some kind of surveillance center, and before it stood figures in green fatigues. There were 2 of them, and between them were Aria and Meeker. "We've got 'em both," the figure on the right called out. "The name's Gathlin Rhoda, bounty hunter, and this here is my partner Rinshiku," Woody Death sparked to his friends. He pointed to the man on the opposite side of the hostages. "To be perfectly frank, we've got no beef with you. But if we grab the girl, you were sure to follow. So that being the case, we decided to take you out quick. Now be a good boy and die for us." "I'm sorry, Dee." Aria apologized in a dejected tone. "As soon as you left, they showed up with Meeker. They grabbed him from the teacher's place on the way here. We'd been waiting in town since yesterday. So we borrowed ourselves a spy bird and kept an eye on you with a high-def camera from an altitude of about 30,000 feet. We saw you call at the teacher's house and had a real good idea what you were jawing about. Hell, I knew using the route probably wouldn't stop you. But it'd work on the girl, and I reckon the girl would work on you." Drawing a dagger from his belt, Gathlin put it to Aria's throat. "I'm right, ain't I? If you value their lives, throw down your sword." Dee was gazing at Aria. The body of the man so sure of his victory jolted faintly. Gathlin looked down at the left side of his chest and the stark needle protruding from it. From the spot on the ground where Dee stood to his position was a distance of roughly 200 yards as the crow flies. The seasoned bounty hunter hadn't sensed anything, as he was run right through the heart. A testament to the skill of the young man known as Dee. Still, the man that Gathlin had called Rin was a veteran bounty hunter, too. He'd been pinning Meeker with one hand, but now he drew the boy nearer, wrapping his arm around Meeker's neck, as he should have done from the very start. Or maybe he should have put a knife to his hostage the way his partner had. Before the boy's little face turned purple from the constricted flow of blood, Aria's form sailed into the air above the pair. When she landed without a sound, the bounty hunter's body collapsed at her feet. The dagger buried in the top of his head was one Aria had taken from Gathlin. As Aria raced over, Meeker leapt into her open arms. "You're okay, aren't you?" Meeker nodded. At the time of the ceremony at the school, the boy had suddenly grown sleepy in one of the rooms at Laszlo's house. When he woke up, he was being held prisoner in the factory. "Let's go." Taking Meeker by the hand, Aria was just about to walk away when a murderous intent of the fiercest kind prickled the back of her neck. Pushing Meeker down and leaping off to the right, Aria executed a flip before straightening up, at which point the ash-gray figure that had sailed over her head was standing right in front of her. It can't be. Aria was gripped by a shock akin to terror. Still expressionless, Rinshiku seized the dagger stuck in his head and pulled it free. As if a switch had been thrown, his head sank down into his torso, while at the same time a lump of approximately the same shape jutted from between his thighs. It was the face that had just vanished. No, not just the face, but the entire head, now free from injury. "This is the real me," he said. "What you stabbed was just a growth. It's been a burden to me all my life, but just now it saved my bacon. I can do a few tricks." 2. Here's the first. pulling back in to avoid the dagger Rhea had hurled at it, and the true head popped up from the top next. Suddenly it split lengthwise, and a massive quantity of liquid fountained from it, shooting high into the air. It rained down on both Rhea, who'd made a great leap out of the way, and Mika, who was lying on the ground. The stunned Rhea was prompted to cry, "What is this, oil?" "That it is." And though the voice carried laughter, the face was lacking in emotion, its mouth opened wide. A tiny flame was visible in its depths. "You might be able to run, but I'll turn the brat into a torch. Unless you want to see that, come into the surveillance center. What about the boy?" "I'll hold on to him. So long as you're still against me, it looks like you'll be useful." "You coward." "Is that your professional opinion as a hunter? Bounty hunters would give a play like this a round of applause." A thought unexpectedly shot through Rhea's mind. D. First part end. Second part. At that point, the gorgeous hunter was already halfway to the top of the stairs to the surveillance deck. His racing footfalls didn't make a sound. It was as he took his next step that he sensed danger. Left hand on the rail, he threw himself into the air, and only D could have detected the attacker coming at him from behind out of thin air. A silvery arc was limned. The slash the hunter made while in midair barely missed, and the thing flew back the way it had come. "An attack drone," said the hoarse voice, seeming to issue from the handrail. "It flies at Mach 2, faster than your blade. Someone's got to be controlling it." As she headed for the surveillance center, Rhea glanced at Gathlin's corpse. It knocked the wind out of her. Gathlin was dead, and that was for certain. She knew as much from seeing the man's death throes. However, something was moving his right hand. He was lying with his arm stretched in front of him, but his wrist was raised, and his 5 fingers were making intricate movements. Even on closer inspection, they seemed to be doing no more than tapping the floor at random. Yet to Rhea it looked like something else. To her they seemed to be controlling something. "Here it comes," the hoarse voice snapped. Its words were replaced by a strange slicing sound, and then D fell toward the ground like a beautiful black stone. A black shooting star followed behind him. No doubt it intended to intercept D in midair. However, before it could, something fell from above it to cover it. D's left hand detached at the wrist. Its balance upset, and the drone began to decelerate from its supersonic speed. At that instant, the tip of D's blade shot up from below, impaling both the drone and his own hand. At the same time, D fell flat against the concrete. He immediately got up again and swung his sword. His left hand and the attack drone hit the floor. "You're a real tyrant," the left hand vetched. The stab wound was rapidly fading. "I go to all the trouble of figuring out its speed and direction so I can land on it, and you turn me into a shish kebab, without so much as a thought about all we've been through together." Perhaps the left hand was just a complainer by nature, because as D looked up at the surveillance center he paid no heed to the grumbles about how cruel the world was, or how he must have a death wish. He noticed something that was falling over them like rain from above. "Oil?" The left hand cried, and just then, a small flame sparked in the surveillance deck. Covered by what had become a rain of fire, D's body became a torch burning at thousands of degrees. Once D had thudded to the ground and the flames enveloping him had faded, 3 figures looked down at him from the stairs. Dampier or not, there's no way he could stand 3,000 degrees of flaming oil. At Rin Shuku's words, Mika clung tighter to Rhea. "It's okay." That was all Rhea said. The indestructibility of Dampier's of their noble blood was quite well established, but flames burning at 3,000 degrees would char him right down to the bone. In fact, the fallen D wasn't moving, and oily black smoke billowed from him. "That takes him out of the way," Rin said, breathing a sigh of relief. His eyes blazed with desire as he looked at Rhea. "I've got to get you to my employer before the day is out. He's waiting in an abandoned village called Vilno, about 6 miles from here. Don't drag your feet." Rhea and Mika was still soaked with oil, and a flame danced in Rin's maw. "Got that? Let's get a move on," Rhea told Mika, turning her back to the bounty hunter, and briskly heading toward the door. "Wait, where are you going?" Rin asked, teeth bared in surprise and anger. Over her shoulder the girl replied, "You're a fool not to know what a Dampier can do." "What are you?" Suddenly, fear lanced Rin's heart, and he tottered, his body bisected lengthwise. His lips now split down the middle trembled as he said, "A noble would have burned to death. How?"
See, this guy's human.
Before the hoarse voice had finished its reply, Rin's body opened like a folding fan, the halves arcing to either side to hit the floor. The halves arcing to either side to hit the floor. Rhea gazed intently at Dee as he sheathed his sword. She'd held Meeker's face against her belly so he wouldn't look, but now she relinquished her hold on him. Don't look, she told the boy, turning his head the other way before she continued. You're even better than I've heard. You don't have a drop of blood on your blade. I get the impression you could slice someone open and they might not even notice for 2 or 3 days. You're familiar with Vanel? Dee asked flatly. Aria somehow managed to adjust her tone, saying, I've heard about it. I'm pretty sure it's what they call the village of those who wait.
Oh, so that's where that is?
The hoarse voice suddenly said, and Aria stared at Dee's left hand. She gave an unsettled nod. That's right. One of the last mystery spots left on the frontier. There was a village there once, but they say no one knows what it really is.
Well, that noble mustn't value his life much if he'd pick that place for a meetup. Probably planned on getting rid of the bounty hunters.
The hoarse voice declared in a tone so crusty its face, if it had one, would have been wearing a look of skepticism.
First Mitterhouse, and now this one seems pretty stuck on you too. Any idea why?
The hoarse voice continued. Nope, Aria replied, looking Dee straight in the eye. She inquired, I'd sure like to know too. But all that aside, what are we supposed to do about the kid? Staring down sadly at the little boy, who was still looking the other way, she continued. If we were to bring him back to Clemens, we'd be a good half-day late getting to Vinmel. Whoever hired these two might try a different tack. If I want to kill him, I'd better set out on time. Or would you be willing to bring the boy back to Clemens for me, Dee? 2 pairs of eyes were trained on Meeker. A few minutes later they were off. The boy had responded to the warrior woman's query with a grin that made it clear there was only one possible answer. I'm going with you. Well met. The shadowy voice that flowed from the darkness. It had the ring of a man who'd known the pride and privilege of a ruler since the day he was born. The voice of a noble. So good of you to bring the woman. I shall give you your reward. Come. He was brief and to the point. The mounted figure beside Aria rode forward. Your attire has changed, has it not? Said the noble. It got sliced up. The figure replied, Remove your scarf. Even in the darkness, the noble's eyes could make out the other figure distinctly. Without a moment's hesitation, the figure pulled down the gray scarf that covered his face from the nose down. Rinshiku was the name, was it not? The figure nodded in the depths of the darkness. There could be no mistaking the voice or the face. Bring me the girl. A black-gloved hand seized the reins of the cyborg horse Aria was on. The 2 horses started forward as if they were harnessed together. They were in the central square of the village. The cobblestone ground 50 yards in diameter was illuminated by moonlight, and lights burned in the surrounding houses. Lights. But this was the village of those who wait, and its residents long since vanished, leaving a disturbing area where no one lived. That night, lights burned there. When they were still a good 6 feet away, the noble told them, Right there. Both steeds halted. In the light from the houses, the gorgeous carriage drawn by a team of 4 horses stood out. Its black body was ornamented with gold, and it glittered with jewels just as Mitterhouse's carriage had. So your partner was slain. Well, that matters not. You were pitted against a man known as D. Was he slain as well? The source of the voice stood on the right side of the carriage, wearing a black cape and a hat that resembled a beret. He held in his hand a walking stick toppled by a gold tiger with blazing rubies set in its eyes. The mounted figure shook his head. Oh, you failed them? In that case you did well to make off with the girl. At the cost of Gathlin's life, Rin's voice replied. The caped figure shook. On realizing that he was laughing, Rin shifted in the saddle and asked, Something funny? A thread of insanity linked the 2 shadowy figures. He was cut off by a different voice. What do you plan on doing with me? Aria inquired. All her weapons had been taken away, leaving her completely unarmed. After a brief silence, the noble replied in a surprised manner, Do you not know? Then I suppose Mitterhouse died for nothing. I'm avenging my parents and searching for my brothers and sisters who were taken. You don't need to take me alive, do you, Viscount Abadozen? The golden crest that adorned the front of the carriage was reflected in Maria's eyes. How right you are. Had we not left you alive that night, we wouldn't need to go to all this trouble now. That damnable Langland had to display all the compassion of a human. We alone thought to play the saint, but we would not abide that. At our insistence, it was Langland himself who drank your blood. Drank? Two voices said the same word reflexively. One was Aria's, the other, a hoarse one, was so low that even Viscount Abedozin's ears didn't catch it. Yes. Did you not know? Careless as it may seem, we left you there in the knowledge that having been bitten by a noble, you would likely be disposed of by your fellow human scum. To be honest, even now I am astonished. It appears not a mark was left upon you. On hearing rumors of this, we decided to capture you. That's a lie, you're lying. Putting her left hand to her neck, Ria murmured absent-mindedly, No one drank my blood. I wasn't bitten by any noble, see for yourself. There isn't a mark on me. Exposing her pale throat, Ria thrust it forward, and there was a mysterious desperation on her face. Second part and third part. We know your fate far better than you yourself, Viscount Abedozin laughed, but despite his laughter, doubt was unfurling its black wings in his voice. Because that is the fate we'd bestowed on you. You, however, did not accept it. Why? That is what we would learn. Come. The Viscount beckoned to her. As if strung with invisible wires, Ria climbed down from the saddle. Then she paused, closing her eyes and shaking her head. Come. Once more he beckoned and Aria's resistance broke. This time she approached the Viscount with smooth steps, pressing right up against his chest. A cry of surprise rang out. Aria backed away. Within his cape a dagger was buried to the hilt in the Viscount's chest. The cry had come from Aria. The resistance the dagger had met had told her this wasn't the body of a noble. The Viscount smiled without a sound. I considered myself well versed in the ways of humans, but your stupidity truly leaves me at a loss for words. I have seen through your act, your ploy. Though that is a remarkable disguise, it is all for naught. No matter how you might cover yourself with makeup, you shall fool no one, as you are too beautiful. Aria extended her left hand. The instant she caught the sword tossed by the man who wore Rin's face, her blade whizzed from its sheath in a silver flash, sank into the Viscount at the nape of his neck, and exited through his right side. Though you display remarkable skill in putting a spell on yourself to resist my control, for the past 3 millennia it has been my general policy not to appear in public, particularly when dealing with humans. Merely breathing the same air as them makes me feel dirty. Child, you said your goal is to have vengeance and to search for your siblings, did you not? I did, in point of fact, take in one of your brothers, and out of admiration for your skill and bravery in piercing the heart of the great Abedozin, proxy or not, I give you fair warning. It would be best that you not meet, for your elder brother and for you. Where is he? Where's my brother Jan? You have been warned. If you still desire to see him, remain here. He shall be along presently. As the Viscount said that, the upper half of his body slid off along the diagonal cut and dropped to the ground. The lower half, with its firmly planted feet, soon buckled at the knees and fell. Aria bent over and touched it. It's a doll made of organic cells, she exclaimed. I've heard busy nobles use them as stand-ins at party or government meetings. Aria's blade flashed out in an arc again, and then the gorgeous carriage collapsed too.
Both copies. Cheap, but effective,
said the hoarse voice in a leisurely tone. Its words were relayed by a voice of iron. Mount up. We're going. Dee told the girl. We're the ones those who wait are waiting for. Hurry up. Aria bounded into the saddle and the 2 steeds started to gallop off. Behind them a low, doleful chorus arose. Come back. The horses halted. No, their legs actually continued to pound the ground. They definitely seemed to be moving forward. They must have been. And yet, in opposition to the most basic laws of physics, the 2 steeds didn't advance in the slightest. Why, not only had they stopped advancing, but they were actually moving backward. They had already noticed the figure standing behind them, at front doors and windows beckoning to them. What the hell? Aria cried, desperately working the reins and kicking her steed's flanks as she ground her teeth together. 5,000 years ago, all the men in the village had vanished, never to return. The remaining women could do nothing but wait, and before long stories of the travelers who passed through Vinmel, but didn't come back, began to reach city offices and sheriff's departments. Though Vinmel was no more than the ruins of a village by that point, the investigators who went there were left breathless by the scene that greeted them. Much to their surprise, life went on as normal in the rotting, collapsing homes. and the men from that party found themselves waking up with, breaking bread with, and even chatting with wives, daughters, and mothers, who had been reduced to bleached bones or mummified remains. Of course, these men weren't real husbands or fathers, and their days spent with the dead left them as emaciated as corpses, and it's said that only a combination of physical and magical treatment finally got them to speak the truth. For more than a century after that, the village of Windmill had been behind barricades, off limits permanently. Nevertheless, travelers continued to disappear in its vicinity. Families who'd lost their men waited for them still. Come back to us. The cyborg horses galloped on, yet they were clearly moving backward.
We're in trouble here,
The horse voice insisted.
we're up against a whole village. I don't know what the focal point is.
Let's try burning down the houses. Aria's right hand dipped into her saddlebags, pulling out a cylinder roughly the same size as a conventional clip of bullets. She grabbed the ring on one end off, and yanked it off. Slowly counting to 3, she twisted around on the horse and let the cylinder fly. She had considerable strength. A house more than 60 feet behind them erupted in spiteful, oily flames. Aria's aim was right on the money. Without pausing, she set 4 buildings gloriously ablaze. The scenery began flowing past them normally again. We did it. We're getting out. But Aria's hopes weren't sustained for more than 10 yards. We're moving backward again. How come?
It's the other houses,
Said the hoarse voice.
Seems like the whole village must want us to stay.
I don't have enough incendiaries for that. As Aria cried out, her eyes caught a black form sailing into the air. D. When the figure in the black coat landed, he slammed into the houses behind them like a demonic gale. As the wind passed the figures standing by the doorways, they lost their heads or were split lengthwise, vanishing. That's some incredible swordplay, Aria exclaimed, hot blood racing through every inch of her body. I think I'll... Aria leaned forward a bit to dismount, and then she noticed something. She was already in front of a house. Less than 3 feet away, what looked to be a middle-aged housewife was holding the hands of 2 small boys, and they were all staring at her. In the instant Aria saw their pale, wasted faces, her heart was filled with an indescribable feeling of relief. Oh, that's right. She'd returned home, after a long, long journey. She should never leave again. They would all... We'll all live together, Aria said, and the other 3 hugged her. You came back, didn't you? The woman said, rubbing her cheek against Aria's. It felt like ice. The children joined hands around her waist. The woman clung to her neck. But the 3 people began in unison staring at Aria. Their eyes were bloodshot, their lips dried and cracked. You're not Daddy. The berserker eyes were enough to make Aria want to cover her ears, but the sadness in them woke the huntress from her daze. Now that the wives and children had cried that way the day they'd lost their husbands, their fathers. Every bone in her body creaked. The trio's 6 arms, and even some of their legs, began to squeeze Aria in an attempt to shatter her bones.
Fake! Imposter! Get out of here!
The curses that shook her eardrums were even more pathetic. Aria didn't feel hatred. Without warning, her mind started to slip away. Suddenly, the pressure faded. As she drew oxygen into her lungs, she leapt for the opposite side of the street. The family had turned their backs to Aria. She could make out a diminutive figure standing just beyond them. Meeker. Aria's startled exclamation was rivaled by cries of delight. You've come back, my dear. Daddy. Daddy. And that was how he appeared to them. Miss Aria smashed the village cornerstone. It's in the middle of the square. I tried doing it myself, but I'm not strong enough. Aria didn't need to hear another word. That would be the only way to destroy the evil that infested the village. There was no choice but to get rid of everything, village and all. The family tried to pounce on Meeker, and the boy's tiny form dashed about, skillfully evading their grip. Hurry, Miss Aria, I'll be okay. As he said that, Aria kicked off the ground. D, keep Meeker safe. She shouted as she ran off. Her eyes pierced the darkness. She reached for the center of the square unmolested. When a village was formed, a stone monument with the community's name and the date of its founding was always erected at its center. It was the life of the village, so to speak. Some might even call it the place's soul. Neither Aria nor Dee had thought of it, yet the boy had told her to strike at that stone.
That's one hell of a kid.
Aria raced toward the easily recognizable gravestone like plinth. Perhaps it was on account of how focused her attention was that she didn't notice the figure crouched by the village flagpoles a short distance off. An incendiary charge, she thought. but on reconsideration, her right hand took hold of her sword. "Don't." The threadbare tone of the woman's voice stopped the huntress's arm. Maria turned around. People filled the square. Hoary-headed crones, wary middle-aged matrons, young ladies, little toddling girls, all female. Women abandoned by their men, left behind to die while waiting for them. "Please stop," a crone said, her body quavering. "If that breaks, we'll lose even our waiting place," implored a mother holding a baby. "My papa won't be able to come home." "Forget them already," Maria cried out to the wall of women. "Forget any man who wouldn't come back." Her words broke off there. Forget it. What lost is gone, and it's never coming back. Wasn't that something Maria herself refused to do? "If it were you, could you forget?" asked a pale-faced woman of middle age. "Have you ever lost anything precious?" "Yes, I have," Maria nodded vehemently. "My mother and father were slaughtered by nobles. Their throats were torn open, my brothers and sisters were bitten, then carried off. Made into servants, I hear. I need to release them all, to drive a stake through their hearts with my own hands." "But didn't you tell us to forget?" A little blonde girl said, smiling. She clutched a battered doll. "You should forget them too, and become one of us," said the woman, cradling an infant. Hers was a gentle voice. "Wait with us. Wait for your loved ones to come back." Sweet voices filled Aria's heart with warm peace, like a false sense of healing. Her sword dropped. "It's easier this way," Aria heard a distant voice say. It bore a startling resemblance to her own. The crowd suddenly contracted. Arms beyond numbering reached out to Aria, and then, far off, she heard someone call out, "Miss Aria!" It was Mika's voice. As the sense of relief started to swallow up Aria's mind, the boy's voice formed a hot, focused mass. "I have things to do." Turning her back to the approaching thicket of pale hands, Aria moved forward and struck her blade against the stone monument before her. Chapter 5 ends.